This is about Adam and Eve, and then I'm going to read our fortune cookie. This is also about how religions are about a sequence in nature. So physical delusions think that they convict that religions have to be someone can't be two religions at the same time. Inherent to all temporary values is is lasting value, is unchanging value. Space nature has one unchanging value, actively a demonstration of it. And this is what the Campus Marcius was originally about. As one identity we share, religion train. The A in the center, this is to show what the Trinity, to teach about the Trinity in metaphysics. Between that and A and value I, you could put value I there too, is a range. And we'll see that this is how unchanging space, the particular value of the identity of unchanging, every value has a particular identity. And this is because there's one value, there's one identity of value that is actively a demonstration of itself as unchanging positives nature, as unchanging is the one unchanging positive nature. So there's one value that is also in nature that is also unchanging, but it's in the realm of change too. For example, with immediate space value Earth, we're immediate space value. It's unchanging distinctly in relationship to temporary value nature, because it's coming through it, so it's progressively too. So Allah is used to teach this. In the beginning of the Old Testament, begins with the consciousness of God. Before matter with any criminal persuasions, we're going to see that Adam stands for the subject and Eve stands for the verb, not just in English. English was revealed to teach how the sciences together are in one act, and that's the act of correlation. And there's a lot. There's in other words, the other sciences juxtaposed with English. You can't read about this because of an ancient organized crime method. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a lawyer. But demonstrably, since ancient times, there has been a need for people who are not lawyers to speak against injustices. And they have means for this inside and outside of court, for example, with ancient Latin laws. But there are also proofs that on top of that, free speech is not being let outside the courts, and with exploitations of the time and positions of the treatments of facts with that. So we have interbranch laws with every nation, not just ours. America lost on significant fronts in the American Revolution. We lost what was geopolitical campus corruption. I read in a book somewhere that they knew. In other words, there are proofs too that there's ways to correlate. They knew that the earth was not flat, but they were teaching that it was flat because they were associated with organized crime that was legalized, but it was criminally legalized. So nations say, we can't sue the government. But that's being used as an excuse not to let people tell the truth. There's proof with Hillary Clinton with the treatment of the FBI director, where he said that the FBI can lie, but she can't. They're involved with natures of organized crime, demonstrably, per facts, where they pretend the right to lie. In other words, because they know they can get away with it in relationship to natures of organized crime. Lie progressions affected to the members of distinct branches, of each of the branches in conjunction with the families of multiple agencies per recorded proofs. And what they're doing to what they so since they were kids, to all areas we have known and unknown, unrealized criminal enterprise juxtapositions with our streets, with our schools, and with our branches, with our nations. Not one nation didn't fall to this in founding, and because we fell to this in founding, in other words, we didn't. In other words, we didn't fall to it until after, when the political theater that was forced on our founders is forced to be stayed to them. In other words, they wanted us to be able to have the free speech to explain how they were extorted, and their plan, which was not, which had nothing to do with census. It's a hurtful heart. The only way it hurts us to have this conversation is halfway. In other words, not even, no, it's semi. The ancients revealed English to teach these sciences semi. For example, the colon is only a semi-positive, is a complete positive, because it attaches two natures of independent natures of consciousness. The nature of unchanging positive identity, that particular positive, that's a positive we all share. In physics, for example, we're a species beyond our control. That the nature of unchanging positive is, and that's with might be above our heads and below our feet. It's beyond our control. With our particular bodies, and with group bodies like nations, this is what ratiocination is to reveal through correlation unchanging positive identity, which is the one we share for a reason, because we share with Earth too. So since, because, for example, Adam is the subject and Eve is the verb, not only in English, but this is used to teach about the law, and with regards to statutes that are for regarding internation criminal enterprises. The Bible and the Quran are about internation criminal enterprises that other religions share too. If you take the Quran in sequence, the Quran values what they semi-translate correctly as unbelievers. It values them more than people who take Islam outside of its meaning and outside of its nature. What complicates this subject is that that these religions are speaking three ways. One way to the physical body, for example, Saudi Arabia. That's a physical body. It's semi-positive. But what the Quran is demonstrating, it wants, is that to be understood, that semi-positive is for correlation with unchanging positive, which is the identity. The identity is also is to correlate. Now, not of groups and of sexes, not in physics. Value will be, it was before and will be, and is coming through physics, which is why metaphysics is so important, because this is the correlation of unchanging positive, which is invisible but through correlation, the only unchanging positive value. So, for example, in the law, a predicate act is a criminal act that's facilitated. It's an insidious act too, in nature, in relationship to the maintenance of live progressions. And in other words, and or whatever physical motivations there are. But what religions are about the natures of organized crime that is juxtaposing, maintaining itself juxtaposed with a whole array of physical motivations and natures of crime. And these are being maintained to all areas, with all our nations per what we lost to, and per the method of it, which is in my art to describe this. There's a devil. In other words, these religions are talking about an organized crime, and the devil is the agenda. Is the identity of it. In other words, the shared identity of a negative value nature progression. Because when you're not a nature that is willing to be unchanging, what is positive to all three, the species, the individual, and the body, of value being the group or being the sex. The value, sex is a demonstration of the nature of polarity in generation of one value that they can. There's only one value they could be, and they could be it either positively or negatively. This is because consciousness is diffusing through us in act. So in other words, we correlate. In other words, our soul is not just at the end; it's right now. While even if we're just sitting there, there's a progression that's unchangeable. There's a sequence nature and demonstration to us. Always, everything is in demonstration. Even why the Earth is round in an immediate space, why only immediate space is that we're aware of has value, unchanging value, diffusing through it as one body, Earth. Now, the Old Testament, what it's about with Adam and Eve, is about how man stands for mother's alpha neutralizes. This is with different sciences. See, we all come from a mother. In the ancients, had been, in other words, revelations were exploited, were criminally re-engineered. And they realized if they did this, they could seed the world for all kinds of ulterior reasons, defending misjudgment, lie progressions. In other words, evidence fabrication natures, indifference to improper facts and time treatments and value in nature treatments. So that's what the problem we have. Like, for example, right now, the 7 bands of the Lakota, if I said it right, the Lakota, the Dakota, right now they're trying to overcome the treatments of a pipeline going through water on their land, and they're trying to say that there's landscape theater that they don't even have words for. In other words, this landscape was tactically denatured. The Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Museum is the oldest in this nation, and they remember, semi-remember, their clam beds. Clam beds, they make the water clear. They had all clear, nice, countless food sources. They burned acres of woods, even though wood was so valuable in Europe and stuff like that. They made so many arrows and stuff like that. They destroyed, not because of the reasons they were blamed, not because of war and all these things. War is a negative value nature progression that was invented through what criminally re-engineered ancient education differentially from the same source. So we'd all be blaming. This is why culture is so strong too. It has to do with natures of police that we're not being allowed the sophistication of honest fact treatments to address, because they have police stand for one thing. So we have our physical police are intellectually extorted, and they know this. but they don't have the words for it. Just like the Native Americans, they're intellectually, they're linguistically, they don't have free speech. They have to entertain all kinds of things that really are inseparable from their conversations. That are too many time and possessions, and it's to a nature of logic that is incapable of speaking for their earth. So, in other words, and if they're going to make a cheap pipe through the Lakota land, and then what happens if it breaks someday? They should have it at least. If they really have to do, what if the earth needs all the oil for the core and for the heat that rises? How long? In other words, there's no problem. But how long have we been sucking and and because of the nature of not just because of the nature of business, because of the nature of the law, because of delusions and hurt conviction natures and the differences with that all only let trained realize self-defeating positions and facts mistreatments. And why and what that's in relationship to is international uncharged natures of organized crime roles with the prisons since ancient times with medicine. See, then they have facts treatments where they don't talk about things because they pretend people and all. I don't want. They say, "Oh, this person doesn't want to talk about stuff like that." Then they make up stories. You should see. There's natures of child abuse. There's natures of elderly abuse that go right on through the branches in these states, especially New England. You have to understand the losses we suffered in the American Revolution. We have to understand that and how. Into science, these people can't take the having metaphysics taught properly. You know, they made a name dropping. They have an evidence fabrication method of even with the classes, with the way they do the grades and with the treatments of the kids and of the issues. So Adam is the subject, Eve is the verb. To show not just in that science, all the sciences are to one act of correlation. So the predicate act is connected to why the predicate is named the predicate. But for example, the colon was definitely the ancients wouldn't have named it the colon because the focus of this science is unchanging positive, and this is a correlation of the identity of unchanging positive in the nature of the colon, because the grammar mark, which is 2 points of real possession, they must have called it that, and the comma is a shadow of possession, cast it off the period with light coming from right to left. See, this is a sequence nature, and Allah is used to teach this as well. Allah has 5 natures within the 0. In other words, Arabic saved algebra for all of us. And the Old Testament did damage control too, to already captive human education, and so human conviction natures and interests and opinions and indifferences. So what we have to do is admit that this is not real or free business. Then we have nations with nuclear weapons, or even atomic weapons. God, any weapon. You're going to drop bombs from the sky and you're going to say that's business. You know what I'm saying? Because they have colonization. They have colonial infrastructure, standards set up when they had slavery, all kinds of witch trials, all kinds of they have white people's slaveries too. You have to understand the nature of organized crime with police forms that are internation since before founding, and with campuses. So now they're going to be only let trained realized to self-defending roles. So there's a devil playing a game called expert lean, where every nation, they lean on experts with their treatments. That's not and facts that aren't real, attached to convictions, and that's time and positions. The nature of indifference that defends that, regardless of what it's attached to. So we're going to have to learn about criminal insidiousness in ways that nations failed to, because they never had the words to describe what they're still a part of and how, because colleges are only letting people trained to the defense of self-defense natures in relationship to treatments of logic that are categorically ill, like for example with like straw man argument and things like that. We have to deal with real facts, like straw man. In other words, like they have a straw man. They have these arguments where it's like pseudo logic because they're not discussing about real premises. And real ratiocination uses premises and uses unchanging positive for correlation. And and what's unchanging positive? There's nothing unchanging positive in correlation in relationship to the defense of the value nature system that we have. So in the beginning of back to the Old Testament, Adam and Eve, and organized crime. Because Adam and Eve they committed a predicate act. They did an internation crime. So they take this is what it stands for when Adam and Eve eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now they're no longer on the value nature system of the tree of life, which is unchanging positive, that particular identity of value. We have temporary identities because one identity is in demonstration to us. And again, we have a shared identity. In other words, the nature of what is positive to us has nothing to do with physics. The body feels it because that's for core. The body's a semi-positive, but it's only positive one way in relationship to the identity that is the phenomenon of consciousness diffusing through itself. Also because this is the bond to matter, which is value W, capital W. But it's in other words, inherent to every semi-positive value, every temporary value or value nature is only semi-positive. Time is only semi-positive, but inherent to time is unchanging positive. So when you see unchanging positive, it's also inherent to every other value. So we understand, when you see that correlation, we're going to understand the Trinity. And that is a range within the real within the Trinity, beyond it. It'll always be beyond us, right to left and left to right. And so we have choices, but because we have humanity on an ulterior from natural value nature system, and how and why, because the devil knew, organized crime knew that if they set up from empirical experience that with the revelations and having gone through time, they knew that we were a species. They knew the earth was round. You know what I'm saying? But what we have are summary convictions that force facts treatments by what science says. But science, what they do is they're hiding the facts that prove the correlation of what they're saying is untrue. In other words, we know that our founders were extorted. They didn't have free speech. James Madison had to drop off Marbury versus Madison. And I'm not a lawyer. True justice satisfies all appearances of justice all ways. What this means, what this wants to say, is that unpositive is what's unchanging positive is a sequence nature too. And if it's not positive always, it's not unchanging positive. So, excuse me. To Maine, because of Poland Spring. So now we do. Now we do the spring never been. We do this. What is our fortune cookie? Our fortune says 1 minute of time worth more than 1 ounce of gold. Oh, it's a good one too. 1 minute of time worth more than 1 ounce of gold. See why?